Let us read Psalm 136, verses 1 to 9. Give thanks to the Lord, for he is good, for his steadfast love endures forever. Give thanks to the God of gods, for his steadfast love endures forever. Give thanks to the Lord of lords, for his steadfast love endures forever. To him who alone does great wonders, for his steadfast love endures forever. To him who by understanding made the heavens, for his steadfast love endures forever. To him who spread out the earth above the waters, for his steadfast love endures forever. To him who made the great lights, for his steadfast love endures forever. The sun to rule over the day, for his steadfast love endures forever. The moon and stars to rule over the night, for his steadfast love endures forever. Verses 23 to 26. It is he who remembered us in our low estate, for his steadfast love endures forever, and rescued us from our foes, for his steadfast love endures forever. He who gives food to all flesh, for his steadfast love endures forever. Give thanks to the God of heaven, for his steadfast love endures forever. The great 19th century preacher Charles Spurgeon was visiting an elderly Christian woman who lived in a tiny, weather-worn home. She had almost nothing, just a few pieces of old furniture, a small stove, and a Bible that looked like it had been opened more than any book should withstand. When Spurgeon asked her how she managed life with so little, she smiled and said, "Oh, Mr. Spurgeon, I'm rich. I have a banknote pasted in my Bible." Curious, he opened it and found written in her own handwriting, next to Psalm 136, the words, "This is my inheritance. His love endures forever." She didn't possess financial wealth, but she held a truth so rich that it shaped her entire outlook on life. She had anchored her soul to the refrain that has echoed through the centuries. His steadfast love endures forever. Psalm 136 is sometimes called the Great Hallel, the great song of praise. It was sung in the gatherings of Israel, in festivals, in times of thanksgiving, and even in seasons of national reflection. What sets the psalm apart is its unforgettable rhythm, the repeated refrain that appears in all 26 verses. His steadfast love endures forever. The Hebrew word behind steadfast love is chesed, a word so rich that no single English word can capture its fullness. Translators have used terms like mercy, loving kindness, faithful love, loyalty, grace, and covenant love. It carries the idea of loyalty expressed in compassionate action, especially within a covenant relationship. It is a love that moves God to rescue, protect, provide, forgive, and remain faithful, even when his people fail. And when the psalm says this love endures forever, it is declaring that God's covenant faithfulness and kindness are not subject to the march of time or the wavering obedience of his people. Time changes, people change, circumstances change, but his steadfast love remains. The psalm opens and closes with a call to give thanks, inviting every worshipper, ancient and modern, to join in a chorus of gratitude. The first verse gives us a simple and profound reason. Give thanks to the Lord, for he is good. His goodness is not a mood, a reaction, or a temporary posture. It is his very nature. And because he is good, his actions toward his people flow out of that goodness and are marked by his steadfast love. The psalmist quickly lifts our eyes to the sheer greatness of the God we are thanking. He is not merely one deity among many. He is the God of gods and the Lord of lords. No one can surpass him. No rival can contend with him. In Deuteronomy 10:17, Moses reminded Israel of this truth. For the Lord your God is God of gods and Lord of lords, the great, the mighty, and the awesome God. Later, even King Nebuchadnezzar, one of the most powerful rulers of the ancient world, was compelled to confess to Daniel, "Truly, your God is God of gods and Lord of kings." In the New Testament, the same divine title is used of Jesus Christ, the exalted Son, whom God has given the name that is above every name, before whom every knee will bow. Revelation crowns him with the title King of Kings and Lord of Lords. Scripture consistently draws our hearts to a single truth. The God whose love endures forever is also the God who reigns forever. From verse 4 onward, the psalm becomes a journey through history, a retelling of God's faithful actions in creation and redemption. Each line ends with a reminder that it was his steadfast love that moved him. The psalmist begins with creation. To him who alone does great wonders, who by his understanding made the heavens, who made the sun to rule by day and the moon and stars to rule by night. The universe is not the product of chance or accident. It is a work of divine wisdom. Long before God created humanity, he set the sun, moon, and stars in their places, not merely as cosmic ornaments, but as a demonstration of his dependable, sustaining care. Every sunrise whispers, his steadfast love endures forever. Every starry night repeats the refrain. Creation itself is a love letter written across the sky. But God's steadfast love is not only seen in creation, it is woven into the fabric of Israel's redemption story. The psalmist recalls the mighty deliverance from Egypt, the judgments against Pharaoh, the striking down of the firstborn, the dramatic parting of the Red Sea. Through every act of rescue, every display of power, every step through the wilderness, the refrain remains unchanged. God did not deliver Israel because they were perfect. He delivered them because he had bound himself to them in covenant love. He led them through the wilderness for 40 years, protecting and sustaining them in a land of scorpions, heat, hunger, and danger. He defeated powerful kings like Sihon of the Amorites and Og of Bashan, rulers who stood in the way of God's people inheriting the land. Kingdoms rose against Israel, but they fell before the Lord because his steadfast love endures forever. The psalm then turned from ancient history to the present moment. It is he who remembered us in our low estate. This is where the psalm becomes deeply personal. It reminds us that God is not merely the God of our ancestors. He is the God who remembers us today in our weakness, in our need, in our moments of discouragement and fear. Paul describes our low estate in Romans 5, while we were weak, ungodly, sinners, and even enemies. Christ died for us. It is staggering to consider that God's steadfast love reached its highest expression not when we were at our best, but when we were at our worst. He loved us when we could not love him. He pursued us when we were running the other way. He reconciled us when we had nothing to offer him. No earthly love can match this. The psalm also celebrates the God who rescues us from our foes. Israel had physical enemies. We face spiritual ones. Hebrews 2 reminds us that Jesus took on flesh so that through his death he might destroy the one who holds the power of death, the devil, and deliver us from lifelong slavery to fear. The steadfast love of God is not sentimental. It is powerful. It is a rescuing, defending, conquering love, a love that enters the battlefield on our behalf. And not only does God save, he sustains. The psalmist says, he gives food to all flesh. Jesus taught his disciples to pray, give us this day our daily bread, because he knew the Father delights to provide the needs of his children. God's provision is not limited to the righteous. He gives to all flesh, saint and sinner alike. It is his nature to give. Every meal, every breath, every kindness from his hand is a fresh evidence that his steadfast love endures forever. The psalm ends just as it began. Give thanks to the God of heaven, for his steadfast love endures forever. The circle closes. Praise begins and ends with gratitude for the enduring love of God. This refrain is not simply poetic. It is theological truth set to worship. It anchors the entire psalm, and if we allow it, can anchor our hearts as well. When we read the Bible, we find that the steadfast love of God is not a theme confined to ancient Israel. It is a story of every believer, the heartbeat of redemption, the bedrock beneath every promise God has made. So what does this mean for us today? It means that in every season, whether bright as the sun or dark as a wilderness night, we can rest in the confidence that God's love is not fleeting. It does not waver with our emotions or diminish with our failures. It held Israel through centuries of wandering and rebellion, and it holds us through every uncertainty of life. The same God who spread the heavens, parted the sea, conquered kings, remembered the lowly, and sent his Son to die and rise again, this God still acts, still loves, still rescues, still provides. The practical application is simple yet profound. Live today in the security of a love that will never run out. Let gratitude shape your prayers, your decisions, your interactions, and your perspective. When fear rises, answer it with a refrain. When doubts whisper, respond with the truth. When blessings come, acknowledge the giver behind them. When trials weigh heavy, remember the God who brought Israel through the sea and who brought Christ through the tomb. His steadfast love endures forever. So trust him, obey him, and rest in his faithfulness. The same God who cared for his people in the past is the same God who walks with you today and will lead you faithfully into tomorrow. God bless.